Hey guys, tonight we drift into the restless waves, where wind howls like distant cries and the ocean boils with secrets. You stand on a weathered deck. There's no land in sight, only rolling darkness and the rhythmic moan of old timbers. Lightning forks the sky, and for a moment, something glimmers on the horizon, a shape that shouldn't be there, then vanishes. No splash. No sound. Just gone. You've just entered the world of ghost ships. These aren't just creaky legends told by tipsy sailors at port. Real ships have gone to sea and never returned. At least, not with their crew. Some glide back into view, sails full but utterly empty. Others never appear again, except in whispers. And the creepiest ones? They come back without explanation, abandoned and perfectly preserved, as if frozen in time. You probably won't survive this journey. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Always fun to see who's drifting with us across time zones. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your boots thud softly on wet planks. It's 1738, and you're standing on the Palatine, a ship that should have reached the American colonies weeks ago. But something's wrong. The sails hang like torn curtains. The hold reeks of rot. The crew is skeletal from starvation, and the passengers are frantic, crammed into corners and praying to a god they suspect may not be watching. This wasn't uncommon in the 18th century. Ocean voyages were a brutal gamble. Ships disappeared for all sorts of reasons. Storms, pirates, navigation mistakes, mutiny, scurvy, or plain bad luck. But sometimes, they vanished in perfect weather. No wreckage, no survivors, no message in a bottle. Just gone. Take the Octavius, for example. According to legend, it was found drifting near Greenland in 1775, 13 years after it had supposedly vanished. When the boarding party went below deck, they found the crew frozen stiff in their bunks, a captain still seated at his desk, pen in hand, mid-sentence. Like an Arctic Pompeii. Mainstream historians shrug this off, claiming no official record of the Octavius exists. But that's the fun part. Ghost ship stories often live in the in-between, where folklore and fact blur like fog on the water. You lean on the railing, squinting through the mist. In the distance, a black shape crests a wave, then disappears. Maybe it's just a whale. Maybe it's something else. That's the thing with ghost ships. They never arrive when you expect, and never leave the way they came. Back in the age of sail, it didn't take much for a ship to be presumed lost. Weeks turned into months, and families back home clutched faded letters as news grew colder. Then suddenly, one day, a local fisherman would report a strange sight, a fully rigged schooner gliding silently near the shore, no lights, no crew. Some swore these ships didn't move with the wind, they moved against it. The scientific mind might say, dead reckoning errors, currents, drifting. But tell that to the 19th century fishermen of Block Island, who believed the burning Palatine ship reappeared every winter near the coast. Some even claimed they heard screams echoing across the icy waves. Historians still argue whether the Palatine light was a natural phenomenon, a misremembered shipwreck, or an early example of community myth-building. Others say it's something more, the ocean's way of keeping a grudge. Even modern satellites can't always explain what's out there. In 2003, a rogue fishing vessel called the High Aim 6 was found adrift off the Australian coast. The engine was running, the food stores were fresh, but there wasn't a soul aboard. The crew simply vanished, passports still in their cabins. You shiver. The air's colder now, not the kind of cold you measure in degrees, but the kind that slips down your neck like a whispered threat. Even stranger are the reports of phantom ships, vessels seen only in the mind's periphery. Sailors speak of shadowy forms that follow them at night, always out of reach. 1 minute there's nothing. The next, a hulking galleon looms behind them in the fog, only to vanish when approached. Some chalk it up to fatigue-induced hallucinations. Others point to Fata Morgana, a mirage caused by atmospheric distortion, bending light over the curve of the Earth. And yeah, science can explain a lot. But when you're in the middle of the ocean with no land for 1,000 miles, your brain doesn't care about mirages. It cares about survival. There's a fringe theory, because of course there is, that ghost ships aren't just abandoned, they're claimed, snatched into a kind of nautical purgatory. Maybe it's a wrinkle in time, maybe an echo of something tragic, looping endlessly. Some even believe the ocean itself is alive, and ghost ships are the way it remembers. You pause. Something taps the hull below. Could be driftwood, could be something else. You don't lean over the side to check. Back in the 1600s, sailors believed in sea spirits that haunted vessels. Entities like klabautermans, mischievous little goblins, who warned crews of impending doom by knocking around the ship. Cute in theory, less cute when it's 3 a.m. and you're alone on night watch. You glance up. The clouds break for a second. Moonlight glints off a mast far off in the distance. Another ship. Maybe. No running lights, just a shape. Then nothing. You try not to blink. Every culture with a coastline has ghost ship lore. In Japan, there are the funayurei, spirits of those lost at sea who attempt to board passing ships and drag the living down. In Scandinavian waters, sailors spoke of the draugr, undead mariners cursed to sail until they found peace. But here's the fun part. These stories often overlap, even from regions that never interacted. Coincidence? Collective unconscious? Or maybe the sea just tells the same story in every language. You breathe deep. Salt, wind, wood, old iron. The ocean's cologne. Just ahead, a lifeboat bobs empty. Faded lettering on the stern. The paint is peeled, but you can still make out the name. It's yours. But you haven't boarded one yet. You hesitate, staring at the lifeboat with your name on it. There's no one inside. Just a coiled rope, a damp woolen blanket, and a small, rusting lantern swaying from its hook. It shouldn't be there. You haven't climbed into any boat. And yet, it waits, like it's been expecting you. Welcome aboard the Mary Celeste. December 4th, 1872. You stand now on the deck of the Dei Gratia, a British merchant ship sailing calmly across the Atlantic. The wind is gentle, the sea glassy. Then, in the distance, a speck, a ship, sails up, swaying like a drunk, but no signal, no response. Odd. As your crew approaches, a strange silence thickens the air. You climb aboard the drifting vessel and immediately feel it, the emptiness. The nameplate reads, Mary Celeste, a brigantine that had left New York just days before. Its intended destination? Genoa, Italy. Everything seems in order. Sort of. The cargo is intact. The barrels of industrial alcohol are secure. The food in the galley is untouched. Even the captain's quarters are tidy, with personal effects undisturbed. But where's the crew? Gone. Vanished. The lifeboat is missing. Sure, but there's no sign of panic, no water damage, no indication of an emergency. It's as if they all quietly stepped off the ship mid-breakfast and disappeared into thin air. Now here's where things spiral deliciously into speculation. One theory suggests foul play, insurance fraud perhaps. Another, a sudden seaquake or waterspout frightened the crew into abandoning ship. Some even whisper about sea monsters, alien abduction, or portals to other dimensions, because of course they do. The ship's log offered no help. Its final entry was dated 10 days before discovery. Calm seas, all fine. Historians still argue whether the Mary Celeste was victim of human error, natural phenomenon, or something weirder. The captain, Benjamin Briggs, was known to be cautious and deeply religious. His wife and daughter were aboard too, making the idea of reckless behavior less likely. And yet, something caused 9 people to vanish forever, leaving behind warm meals, working sails, and a ship that wanted nothing more than to be noticed. You lean against a rail that creaks under your hand. You half expect to hear faint footsteps, maybe a cough, but the deck remains empty, save for the ghost wind brushing your face. Centuries later, the mystery of the Mary Celeste still stings the public imagination. Hollywood made movies. Sherlock Holmes solved a version of it. Even Arthur Conan Doyle, under a pen name, penned a fictionalized retelling that spun fact into fable. Ironically, that piece is why many remember the story at all. Turns out, even ghost ships need a good PR team. A fringe theory, brace yourself, suggests that the alcohol vapors leaking from the barrels may have created a toxic atmosphere below deck. The crew, spooked by the smell and risk of explosion, temporarily abandoned ship, tying themselves to it via ropes. A sudden gust could have broken the line, stranding them forever in the vast, indifferent ocean. Plausible, chilling, but ultimately unverifiable. You wander the ship, stepping past ropes that seem too neatly coiled for such panic. You glance at the galley table, where a moldy loaf of bread sits beside 3 mugs. One has a lipstick stain. You tell yourself it's probably rust. The sea can be cruel, but sometimes it's worse when it's polite. Calm water, clear skies, and no excuse for why people simply stop being there. In the wake of the discovery, salvage trials were launched. The Dei Gratia crew was rewarded for their find, though under a suspicious cloud. Some officials thought maybe, just maybe, they had something to do with the vanishing. After all, they stood to gain from returning a seemingly abandoned ship. But no evidence was found. Just open decks and eerie silence. And here's your quirky tidbit. In 1885, a man tried to intentionally turn the Mary Celeste into a ghost ship by loading it with junk and running it aground in Haiti for the insurance money. The ship had been sold, resold, renamed, but no matter what, she kept returning, stubborn as a haunted Roomba. Ultimately, she was wrecked beyond repair and left to rot. A ship too infamous to sink quietly. Still, many argue her curse lingers. Other vessels with ties to her former crew or cargo were reportedly plagued by mishaps, disease, or disappearance. Coincidence? Or are some ships just wrong? You step into the captain's quarters. A diary lies open. The ink has faded, but you think you can make out the words, "We are all well." That's it. Not exactly helpful. The lamp on the desk flickers, not because you touched it, just because. There's a chill again, sharp this time, like someone just opened a door to the deep. You back away and return to the deck. The sky has gone a shade darker. The ocean murmurs. If ships like the Mary Celeste teach us anything, it's that even when everything appears perfectly normal, orderly, routine, boring, it can still unravel without warning. You don't always need a storm. Sometimes it's just quiet, and then empty. Modern GPS and communication tools should prevent such vanishings now, right? Well, about that, as we'll see later, even in the 21st century, ghost ships still show up. Newer tech just means we have more data to be confused by. A ship's heartbeat, if you can call it that, is in its crew. Without people, it's just a husk, a floating museum of decisions and disasters. And yet, when the crew vanishes, sometimes the ship itself won't let go. You hear a creak behind you. A shadow moves in the periphery. You whirl around. Nothing. Just you, and the sound of waves softly clapping the hull like polite applause after a haunting performance. Your hand brushes something on the rail. A ring. Too small for you. Engraved inside. CB to MB forever. The sea, it seems, remembers everything. You blink at the ring on the railing. It doesn't belong to you, unless you've recently married someone with Victorian engraving habits. And yet, it's still warm, as if someone had just taken it off. You slip it into your coat pocket, or maybe you leave it there. Hard to say. Ghost ships have a way of distorting choice, of making you feel like you're watching yourself from the other side of a foggy porthole. Suddenly, everything is snow. Thick, blinding cold surrounds you. The sea is no longer blue. It's a solid sheet of ice stretching endlessly toward a horizon that doesn't care about you. Somewhere in this silent, frozen desert, a black speck rises into view. A ship, not wrecked, not drifting, just waiting. You've just stepped aboard the SS Baichimo, one of the world's strangest ghost ships. Because unlike others, this one didn't just disappear. It kept showing up. Here's the quick history, in case you forgot your 1930s Arctic trade route trivia. The Baichimo was a steel-hulled cargo steamer operated by the Hudson's Bay Company. She was built in 1914 in Sweden, originally designed for Baltic trade, but soon repurposed to brave Canadian waters. You'd think a ship that far north would be prepared for ice. You'd be wrong. In October of 1931, the Baichimo became trapped in sea ice off the Alaskan coast. The crew abandoned ship temporarily, setting up camp nearby in the hopes it would break free. It did. Sort of. The Baichimo drifted away on her own. The crew chased her, reboarded, got trapped again. Then, in early November, a vicious storm struck, and the crew was airlifted out for good. But the ship? She didn't sink. She didn't vanish. She just kept floating. For over 38 years. Locals, trappers, and passing vessels spotted her repeatedly along the Arctic coast. Sometimes she was wedged in ice. Sometimes fully mobile, like a dog off leash. No crew, no cargo. No clear reason why she didn't crumble into rust and memory like every other abandoned vessel of the era. Historians still argue whether these repeated sightings were all the same ship or just misidentified wrecks. But records from Inuit communities, commercial sailors, and even the Canadian government suggest this wasn't mass confusion. The Baichimo seemed stubbornly, inexplicably immortal. You clamber up her side now, fingers numb. Her hull groans under your boots like it remembers being heavy. Snow has collected in the corners of her deck, and the ropes are stiff with frost. You step into the wheelhouse. The compass still spins. A map lies pinned under a frozen mug. A biscuit, half eaten, remains on the table. No mold, no decay. Just frostbite in edible form. One woman, trapped in a blizzard in 1933, claimed she took shelter aboard the Baichimo for 2 full days. No lights, no crew, no visitors. Just her, the wind, and a ship that refused to die. She said she could hear whispers below deck, like men arguing in another room, though no one ever appeared. You descend the narrow staircase and nearly slip on the rime-slick wood. Your breath fogs ahead of you. Below deck, it smells like iron, wet wool, and a hint of kerosene. You step through crew quarters, finding everything intact. Bunks still made, lockers still full of notebooks and coats, and small tin shaving mirrors. There's something eerie about a ship, frozen in time. The Baichimo didn't decay the way you'd expect. As late as 1969, nearly 40 years after she was left to the ice, she was still being spotted, still refusing to sink. The Canadian government finally sent an expedition to find and salvage her in the early 2000s, but by then, she was gone. Not sunk. Gone. No wreckage, no logs, no trace of her on satellite. Like she slipped through the cracks between time and tide. A quirky side note, in 1939, an Inuit hunter reportedly found her again and went aboard to salvage timber. He said the walls were warmer on the inside than they should have been, claimed the stove was warm, despite being cold to the touch, said the shadows didn't match the direction of the sun. People laughed it off. But you're not laughing now, are you? You move into the engine room. Pipes groan softly, like they're remembering the pressure of steam. A low creak echoes from deep inside the hull. Could be ice, could be metal shifting. Or, because we're on brand, it could be something else entirely. Something pacing. You hurry back to the deck. The Arctic sky is bruised with purple clouds, and snow begins to fall again. You half expect to see your own footprints vanish behind you. It's possible you've never been here before. It's also possible you never left. Ships like the Baichimo mess with our understanding of impermanence. How does something made of steel survive decades in one of Earth's harshest environments, without maintenance, without fuel, without a single warm body aboard? There's a fringe theory that the Arctic itself preserved her, not just in temperature, but in time. That she became a kind of frozen loop, replaying her last functional moment forever, like an LP with a scratch in just the right place. Every gust of wind, every ice flow, every ghostly creak of a plank, all part of a never-ending performance. You look back at the wheelhouse one last time. The door swings open slightly on its own. Could be the wind, could be curiosity. One more thing before you go. There's still no confirmed wreckage of the Baichimo. That's right. Despite multiple expeditions, sonar sweeps, and historical sleuthing, she has never been found. You trudge back across the ice, crunching through thick snow. Behind you, the silhouette of the ship fades back into the white. You don't remember climbing down, but you're walking away now, breath sharp in your chest, hands clenched. You don't look back. Not this time. The snow melts away. Just like that, it's gone. No slow thaw, no puddles. One blink, and you're standing in warm sea mist. Sun slashing sideways across your face. The ocean here smells less like steel and ice, more like brine, rust, and old curses. You squint toward the horizon, and there it is. A ship. Glowing. No, really. Glowing. Golden red light wraps around its sails like a flame that doesn't burn. It moves swiftly, against the wind, against logic. You try to tell yourself it's a reflection, some atmospheric glitch. But deep down, you already know where you are. You've found the Flying Dutchman. Not a name, really. More like a title, or maybe a warning. The original tale goes back centuries, most famously set in the 17th century, though versions of it crawl even earlier. A ghost ship doomed to sail the oceans forever, never able to make port, never able to die. The legend begins with a Dutch captain, often named Hendrik van der Decken, who sails his vessel into a violent storm off the Cape of Good Hope. When his crew begs him to turn back, he refuses, shouting defiance at nature, man, and possibly God himself. Depending on the version, he may murder someone on board, or challenge the heavens directly. You know, classic team-building stuff. The storm doesn't end. The crew dies, one by one, or turns into spectral wraiths. The captain? Cursed to wander the oceans for all eternity, glowing like a coal in the dusk, bringing doom to anyone who sees his ship. You're seeing it now. You reach for binoculars, or, okay, an imaginary pair, since you're apparently the main character in this dreamscape, and through the lenses, the details sharpen. Ragged sails full despite a dead calm, a figure at the helm unmoving, no birds, no flags, just eerie light and impossible motion. Historically, there are dozens of actual reports from sailors, even military officers, who swore they saw the Flying Dutchman. One of the most famous comes from Prince George of Wales, later King George V, who, as a teenager, claimed to see a glowing ship pass his vessel in 1881, surrounded by a crimson haze. His logbook entry notes the event with the kind of calm detachment only royalty can pull off. A strange red light, all aglow, like a phantom ship, all aglow. Later that night, the seaman who first spotted the Dutchman reportedly fell to his death from the rigging. Coincidence? Sure. Unless you like a good haunting. You keep watching. The Dutchman veers closer, then just blinks away. No ripple, no wake. The ocean forgets it immediately. There's a scientific explanation people like to offer. Fata Morgana, that same atmospheric distortion we talked about earlier. It can bend light and make objects over the horizon appear to float, stretch, even flip upside down. Entire cities have been seen in the sky this way. So a ghost ship? Easy illusion, right? Maybe. But here's the thing. Fata Morgana doesn't explain why so many of these sightings happen during perfect weather, or why the ship often moves against the wind, or why so many accounts, from different centuries, different oceans, describe the same impossible details. Historians still argue whether the Flying Dutchman was ever based on a real vessel. Some believe it was inspired by doomed expeditions like the Haarlem, wrecked near the Cape in 1647. Others think it's a metaphor for guilt, defiance, or pride. Thematic iceberg stuff, you know? But sailors didn't think that deeply. To them, seeing the Dutchman meant one thing. Death was near. You shift your gaze to the water. Beneath the surface, a shimmer, as if something just swam by, fast, large, unseen. There's a version of the Dutchman legend in which the cursed crew is allowed to come ashore once every 7 years, just one night, to find redemption, or a lover, or a drink, depending on who's telling the story. Can you imagine that? Centuries of endless waves, desperate for a single moment of warmth, of life. And maybe every sighting isn't a warning, it's a plea. You step back from the edge of your imaginary deck. Here's a quirky footnote for you. Richard Wagner, the composer, turned the Dutchman tale into a full-blown opera. In his version, the captain can only be freed by true love. It's very dramatic. Lots of swelling violins. The curse is broken not by force or cleverness, but by compassion. So maybe there's hope, even for ghost ships. You lean into the railing and listen. No engine hum, no sails cracking. Just water licking the hull, and your own breath. Then, voices. Software barely there. like humming through a tin can from miles away. You close your eyes, and it swells. Not music exactly. More like a dirge. Wistful. Exhausted. Lonely. The ship returns for a moment, only this time closer. Much closer. You can see the figure on deck more clearly now. Tall, still. Face obscured by shadow. He raises one hand. You're not sure if it's a wave or a warning. You do not wave back. The wind shifts. Your own vessel begins to spin gently, as if repositioning without permission. You step back. The ghost ship vanishes once again, but the cold stays behind. It seeps into your sleeves, into your thoughts. You remember something else now. Another tale. A sailor once said the Dutchman wasn't cursed to wander alone. He was followed. Stalked by another ghost ship. A mirror of his own. They chase each other across the world, doomed to pass within view, but never meet. Like two lost thoughts in an endless sea of forgetting. You reach into your coat pocket. The ring is gone. Only a small, wet outline remains. You check the horizon again, half hoping you won't see anything. You don't. And that somehow is worse. The heat is sudden. No transition this time. Just the abrupt realization that your shirt is sticking to your back, and the air tastes like rusted pennies. You're sweating. But not from fear. Not yet. It's the metallic humidity that gets you first, rising from the water like steam from a boiling pot. You're standing on metal now. Not wood. Steel, wide and scorched by sun. The deck of a warship. And not just any warship. You're aboard a ghost battleship that refuses to stay sunk. Her name was the USS Cyclops. Okay, not a battleship exactly, but close enough. This U.S. Navy collier, a coal transport vessel, was massive. 542 feet long, a floating fortress with a crew of over 300. In March 1918, she set sail from Barbados to Baltimore, and then, poof, nothing. No distress call, no wreckage, not even a single life buoy. The Cyclops was swallowed whole, like a magician's vanishing act, except with a lot more steel and unanswered questions. She remains one of the largest U.S. Navy ships ever lost, without a trace. You pace the deck. The metal below you is warm, humming, like it's remembering its engines. Except those engines have been silent for over a century. And you're not alone here. You see boot prints, fresh, not yours. They lead toward the bridge, then stop suddenly. No smudge, no turnaround. Just gone. Like whoever was walking decided to evaporate halfway through a thought. Some say the Cyclops fell victim to enemy action. After all, this was 1918, wartime. German U-boats were everywhere, but no wreckage was ever found. No claim of sinking her was made. She just didn't arrive. Historians still argue whether the ship suffered structural failure. Her sister ships, the Proteus and Nereus, both vanished in similar fashion during World War II. That's right. All three ships of her class disappeared under nearly identical conditions. No survivors. No evidence. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe someone out there really hated that ship design. You step through a narrow hallway. The lights flicker. Not on the ceiling, but in your mind. You feel disoriented, like the walls are leaning inward. The ship creaks softly, despite the fact it's not moving. Down in the galley, trays are still out. One holds a rusted fork and what looks like a fossilized lemon wedge. You lift a cup. Dry. Clean. No mold. It's as if the ship was paused, not abandoned. And then, there's that smell. old oil and wet paper. The kind of scent you associate with libraries and machine shops and grief. Let's add a quirky fact here. The Cyclops was captained by a man named George W. Worley. He was odd, known for wearing long underwear in all weather, and for wandering the decks at night, muttering to himself. There were whispers of erratic behavior, even mutiny. Some thought he was a German sympathizer. Others thought he simply snapped. But again, no logs, no messages, just theories built on absence. There's a fringe belief that the Cyclops was one of the first modern victims of the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah, that old favorite. And sure, it sounds like tabloid stuff, but the boundaries of that infamous triangle stretch pretty close to where the Cyclops was last seen. You open a hatch and descend into the lower decks. It's darker down here, the walls sweating with condensation. Your footsteps echo like you're not alone, like someone else is following at a polite distance. Just before you turn around, a door opens by itself. There's nothing behind it, just the engine room, stripped and silent. Except, is that humming? You step in. Once these chambers roared with power, coal-fed engines belching smoke and heat. Now, it's just ghosts and memory. The more you walk this ship, the more you get that uncomfortable feeling. Not that something happened here, but that it keeps happening. Over and over. Like the ship is stuck on a loop you've wandered into. You've heard of ghost ships appearing and disappearing. But some, like this one, seem to actively refuse their fate. They don't want to be lost. They want to exist. Even if only to remind us they once did. Every few years, new claims emerge. Parts of the Cyclops found. Satellite images, blips on sonar, a shadow on the ocean floor that might be her. But none of it pans out. She remains the Titanic of nowhere, not found, not forgotten. You return to the bridge. The controls are rusted, the glass fogged. You press your hand to the helm. The wheel shudders. Just once. Outside, the ocean is still. But the sky has gone strange, thick clouds creeping across like spilled ink. You hear something deep below. Not whales, not sonar. Something older. There's a theory that the ocean floor is home to magnetic anomalies, natural ones, that can scramble instruments, confuse compasses, even trigger hallucinations. Pilots have reported flying over some of these areas and suddenly feeling like they'd lost time. Like they'd been somewhere else for a moment. If such fields exist underwater, who's to say they can't affect ships? Maybe the Cyclops didn't sink. Maybe she slid sideways, into a quiet pocket, just slightly out of step with time. Or maybe she's still sailing somewhere. Not in our world, but not entirely out of it either. You spot something off the port side, a shadow in the water. Long, narrow, and definitely not your reflection. It moves just as you notice it, disappearing beneath the surface before you can shout. Not that anyone would hear you. Your heart kicks once, twice, then settles. You step back from the edge, glance down at your boots, and there, in the corner of your vision, a small nameplate wedged in the grating. You pry it free. It reads, Proteus, lost 1941, wrong ship. You're starting to wonder if this one changes its name based on who's watching. You blink. You're back on deck, alone, and the steel beneath your feet is cooling, cooling, cooling. The sun has dropped behind the waves, taking its last amber glow with it. Now, you're floating in stillness. The air hums with the kind of quiet that's too perfect, not peaceful, but suspicious. You've learned to distrust silence on the ocean. That's when you see it. A sleek white catamaran, dead in the water. No sails up, engine idling softly. The radio light blinks red. She's not old, not barnacled or scarred, just floating, neat and modern, as if she'd drifted straight from a brochure. Welcome aboard the Kaz 2, Australia's very own real-life ghost yacht. April 18th, 2007. 3 friends, Derek Batten and brothers Peter and James Tunstead, set off from Airlie Beach, Queensland. Their plan? A relaxed trip up the coast, fishing, sightseeing, maybe a few cold beers, all experienced seamen, all in good spirits. Perfect weather. Easy voyage. 3 days later, their vessel was found adrift near the Great Barrier Reef. The boat was pristine, no damage. The GPS and engine were working. The table was set for lunch. A laptop was open. A cup of coffee sat untouched, still half full. And the crew? Gone. Just gone. You step lightly onto the deck. It barely rocks. The sails are down, but neatly furled. Life jackets are still in their storage bin. One fishing rod dangles from the stern, its line trailing lazily into the water, as if the fisherman had simply walked away mid-bite. You head inside the main cabin, a sandwich on a plate, a cold can of beer, a folded newspaper. The engine is humming, soft, mechanical, faithful. You run your hand along the counter. There's no sign of violence, no blood, no struggle, just a boat waiting patiently, like a loyal dog whose owner popped into the store and never came back. When Australian authorities investigated, they were baffled. There were no storms that day, no signs of piracy. All 3 men were experienced sailors. They had radioed the day before to say everything was going fine. Then, radio silence. One man's shirt was found neatly folded on the deck. Another's sunglasses and wallet sat on a bench. It looked more like they'd gone for a swim and forgotten to return. Except the water was cold, and the boat had drifted for days without anyone trying to reboard it. You climb the stairs to the fly bridge. From here, you can see the vast emptiness stretching out in all directions. No other vessels, no islands, no gulls. Just you, a sky pricked with stars, and the knowledge that 3 living men vanished here without a trace. Here's where it gets even weirder. The GPS logs showed erratic behavior on the 2nd day of their voyage. The Kaz 2 drifted into a tight circle, then moved forward slowly for hours. When investigators reviewed the footage from a video camera left aboard, the final image showed one of the men steering while the others sat calmly nearby. Nothing unusual. No panic. No pirates. Then, nothing. Historians still argue whether the Kaz 2 incident was a freak accident, a case of one man falling overboard and the others jumping in to help, or something far stranger. One theory suggests the boom swung violently, knocking someone into the sea. But then, why wouldn't the others use the boat's radio to call for help? Why didn't they lower the sails or throw a line? Everything was intact. Even the yacht's emergency beacon, the EPIRB, was never activated. You glance up at the boom now. It creaks softly in the still air. But there's no wind to move it. Some fringe theorists whisper about rogue waves, despite the calm conditions. Others point to disorientation caused by carbon monoxide buildup, even though the boat was open air and well ventilated. One wild idea even suggests the men were pulled into the sea by an aggressive sea creature, like an octopus, a really ambitious octopus. You walk along the port side, flashlight in hand. The hull is smooth, unmarked. You pause near the edge, staring into the dark water. It doesn't ripple. It doesn't even shine. It just exists, thick and opaque like liquid ink. Suddenly, the fishing line tugs, just once. You turn, heart snagged. But nothing surfaces, just that small pull, like a nudge from below. You reel in the line, and the hook is gone. Not broken, not snapped, just cleanly sheared off. You drop it. The oddest part of the Cas-2 mystery is how ordinary the whole thing seems. No storm, no pirates, no ghosts in Victorian dresses. Just 3 people who should have lived to tell the tale, but didn't. A quirky side note? This case is sometimes called the Australian Mary Celeste, though it lacks the dusty antiquity of its namesake. Still, the parallels are sharp. Intact vessel, no signs of struggle. Everything eerily paused. You step into the bathroom. A toothbrush rests in its holder. A damp towel hangs, stiffened by salt. There's a pair of sandals neatly placed beside the bunk. You imagine stepping into them, filling the space of someone who simply walked out of their own life and never came back. One of the investigators later remarked that the boat felt too quiet. That strange hush, that sense of being watched by something that wasn't present, but hadn't fully left either. You know that feeling now. You open the logbook. The last entry is brief. Motoring north, weather good, all well. A pause, then one more note, added in smaller, shakier handwriting. Sea looks weird. You don't write that down unless something's very wrong. The Cas-2 was eventually brought to shore and examined top to bottom. Nothing conclusive was ever found. No DNA from strangers. No mechanical failure. No explanation. It's likely the truth was simple. A moment's bad luck. An overboard rescue gone sideways. But then again, why didn't they come back? You sit down at the table. A full cup of coffee stares back at you. The surface ripples once, without sound. The engine clicks off, all on its own. The engine's final click still echoes faintly as everything around you shifts again. The light changes. The saltiness in the air fades, replaced by the sweeter scent of fresh water and algae. The boat beneath your feet is gone. You're standing on something older now, wooden planks, warped and cracked, half submerged in a still, mirror-like lake. You've left the oceans behind, but don't let that calm, glassy surface fool you. Ghost ships live here too. Welcome to the lakes, the sweetwater graves, where the waves may be gentler, but the mysteries are no less sharp. Before you floats the skeletal remains of a paddle steamer, its iron bones reaching up like fingers frozen mid-scream. Around it, the water is unnaturally still. Trees lean in along the shoreline, as if listening. You've entered the realm of inland hauntings. The Great Lakes, Erie, Superior, Huron, Michigan, and Ontario, have swallowed over 6,000 ships since European colonization began. That's not a typo. 6,000. Some disappeared without so much as a barrel surfacing. Others reappeared later, silent and unmanned. Their crews? Never recovered. Let's start with one of the eeriest, the SS Bannockburn, often called the Flying Dutchman of Lake Superior. She vanished in November 1902 during a routine trip across the lake, carrying wheat and a crew of 20. No distress call, no debris. Days later, she was spotted. Or so people said. A watchman at the Sioux Locks saw her glide past in the twilight, sails full, lights glowing softly, but no one responded to hails. She made no sound. When they checked, no ship had passed through officially. No logs. Nothing due to arrive. and the Bannockburn never docked anywhere again. Historians still argue whether the sighting was real or a case of mistaken identity. But even now, sailors on Superior claim to glimpse her hull in the fog, always just far enough away to keep the doubt alive. You take a careful step forward. The planks creak underfoot. This deck isn't the Bannockburn. It's from a different wreck. Maybe the Kamloops, another Lake Superior victim lost in 1927. Her crew was never found either. Divers eventually located the ship in 1977, perfectly preserved in icy depths. The bodies had been mummified by cold and pressure, one still in the engine room, as if waiting for someone to relieve him. You feel something cold slide down your neck. Just condensation. Probably. Lake ghost ships are different. Salt doesn't eat them away. The cold preserves them like time capsules. Many look like they could still sail if someone just turned the key. And some? Some do. Take Lake Ontario's SS Daniel J. Morrell. In 1966, it broke in two during a storm, killing 28 crew. But days after the disaster, the ship's bow, just the front half, was spotted plowing forward through the water. On its own. No crew, no engine, just momentum and willpower. You watch now as a black shape cuts across the lake's surface, fast, silent, directionless. It doesn't ripple the water. It doesn't wave. It just goes. A quirky tidbit, local lore says that on certain misty nights, you can hear steamboat whistles echoing across the lakes, even though no vessels are moving. Park rangers and residents chalk it up to sound bouncing off water and rock. But if you ask them off the record, many will say the same thing. It sounds like a ship calling to dock. But no one ever arrives. You crouch down near a hatch. It's stuck, but gives with a groan. Inside, a lantern still swings on its hook, though no breeze touches it. There's a cap lying on the floorboards. Wool, navy blue, the initials JP, stitched in thread. You're nowhere near the sea and still the ghost stories cling. Maybe it's not about the salt or the tides. Maybe water itself remembers. In Wisconsin's Lake Michigan, the SS Milwaukee, a car ferry, sank in 1929 during a storm. Its wreck was found, but many believe the ship is still seen cruising on foggy mornings, sometimes fully lit. There are even modern reports of radar contact from vessels that don't exist. You glance behind you. Your footprints are still there, but they look older than they should, like they've been here a while. Like you have. You stand again, trying to ignore the faint sound of something dragging across a wet wood. Just a fish, just your imagination. Just don't look back. Not all lake ghost ships come from shipwrecks either. Some are the result of deliberate abandonments, boats left behind, and later seen again when they shouldn't be. Take Le Griffin, one of the first European ships on the Great Lakes, built in 1679. She sailed from Lake Erie toward Lake Michigan and was never seen again. No wreck, no trace, but reports of her showing up near Manitoulin Island pop up now and then. She's always quiet, always drifting, always vanishing when approached. Historians still argue whether Le Griffon was ever real, since her records are sparse and the remains have never been confirmed. But that doesn't stop fishermen from lowering their nets with one eye on the fog. The ghost ships here don't roar or blaze or whisper in otherworldly tongues. They don't haunt like angry spirits. They haunt like unsent letters. Quiet, patient, full of unfinished sentences. The water around you begins to ripple, not from wind, from movement. A long, low groan echoes under the surface, as if something is turning over, stretching after a century of rest. You back away from the edge. A dock you don't remember seeing before has appeared, old and half-collapsed, but sturdy enough. You climb on. As you do, you look back once more. The ship you just stood on is gone. Not sunken, not faded, just gone. Only the footprints remain. Yours, and someone else's. Barefoot. You sit at the edge of that broken dock, dangling your legs above the water. The lake's glassy sheen reflects nothing. No moon, no stars, not even you. It's like the world forgot to render this patch of reality. Then, from the silence, it comes, a burst of static. You turn. There's an old radio perched beside you, squat and metallic, its knobs dulled with rust. You don't remember it being there a moment ago. One of those heavy-duty marine transceivers, the kind used by fishing vessels and coast guards. Still warm. You twist the dial. At first, just white noise, the empty kind, the sound of cosmic dust. But then a voice, thin and garbled, crackles through. Mayday. Mayday. Position unknown. Engine flooded. Crew not responding. The voice disappears, swallowed back into the static. No ID. No frequency listed. No callback. You didn't hallucinate that. The volume needle twitched with each syllable. Welcome to the next layer of ghost ship lore. The disembodied voices of vessels long lost. Phantom radio calls are a real, documented phenomenon. The ocean is full of chatter. Ships, satellites, distress signals, automated beacons. But occasionally, just occasionally, someone picks up a call from a ship that no longer exists. Some say it's a technical glitch, signals bouncing off the ionosphere, echoing years after their origin. Others believe it's something else entirely. Faint cries from wrecks, so traumatized their final moments keep replaying like a looped recording on reality's hard drive. You press the scan button. Another frequency buzzes to life. Aboard the Polar Queen. Multiple injuries. Fire on deck. Requesting emergency TOW. The Polar Queen? That's familiar. You flip open a small leather-bound notebook lying beside the radio. Inside are scribbled dates, coordinates, vessel names. The Polar Queen went down in 1974 off the coast of Iceland. The crew perished. The wreck was found upside down, its hull scorched from an internal explosion. It never sent a distress call, at least not back then. You swallow. Then the radio pulses again. This time, it's a woman's voice. Calm. Too calm. All crew accounted for, but there's something in the cargo bay, not responding to signals. Please advise. The frequency cuts. The battery dies. You look around, but you're no longer at the lake. Somewhere along the signal's trail, the world shifted. You're aboard a rusted fishing trawler, mid-Atlantic. The sky above is overcast, bruised with storm clouds. Below, the sea swells with that peculiar rhythm. It's not angry, just deeply bored and passively menacing. A decaying VHF set sits on the bridge, microphone coiled like a sleeping snake. The logbook beside it has the words, "Heard from the Yara," dated last year. But the Yara was a Norwegian ship lost in the 1980s, vanished without wreckage. And now, a century later twist, its supposed messages still surfacing. Historians still argue whether some ghost calls are hoaxes, mistaken identities, or electromagnetic anomalies. But others, the ones that happen too far offshore, too clean, too specific, they don't fit. A quirky example. In 2003, a private vessel sailing past the Azores reported picking up repeated Mayday calls from the Frederick J. Walker, a British Wubby-Boo-2 escort ship sunk in 1944. The distress message repeated 3 times before vanishing. Authorities chalked it up to signal bounce, but no one else heard it, and the private vessel had no long-range receiver. You move below deck. The interior smells like diesel and mildew. The walls sweat salt. Every now and then, the intercom emits a low crackle, followed by a whisper, too muffled to decode. You think you hear your name? You don't wait to hear it again. Another bizarre incident? The SS Valencia, a steamer that wrecked off Vancouver Island in 1906, losing over 100 lives. Survivors reported watching the vessel sink slowly in the surf, lifeboats smashed by rocks, passengers screaming. But for decades afterward, local fishermen swore they heard ghostly Morse code coming from the cliffs, SOS blips that no one could trace. One lifeboat, perfectly preserved, was found drifting years later. No passengers, just children's shoes. You lean against the bulkhead as another wave slaps the hull. This ship isn't sailing. You realize that now. It's anchored. To what, you're not sure. But you haven't moved in a while. Like it's waiting. You take one last glance at the radio, now silent. You resist the urge to push the call button. But what if someone answered? Out at sea, the lines between past and present get weird. Time slips. Coordinates lose their grip. A distress call from 1951 might arrive in 2025. A reply might never leave the radio's mouth. In fact, there's an entire naval file on phantom frequencies. Unofficial, but real enough that bored analysts once tracked them. One bizarre entry from 1982 notes a transmission that repeated every 6 hours. He's still in the boiler room. Please don't forget us. The file ends with, ship of origin unknown. You return topside. The clouds have cracked slightly, letting in a sliver of moonlight. The deck glistens. In the distance, barely visible, you make out the silhouette of another ship. No lights, no masthead. No wake, but it's broadcasting. You feel it, not with your ears, but in your chest, like a subwoofer buried under your ribs. You swear you can hear it before the signal even hits. You raise the old radio's mic, hand trembling. Hello? You whisper. Is anyone there? Static. Then, yes. And then, nothing. Your fingers tighten around the microphone, but the voice doesn't return. Just static again, soft and steady, like wind over sand. You lower the radio. The fog thickens. But it's not ocean mist this time. It's greenish, laced with a sweet, rotting tang. Something organic. You blink, and when your vision clears, the ocean's wide blue has vanished. You're hemmed in on every side by a dull, drifting mass of vegetation. Welcome to the Sargasso Sea. No coastline, no storms. Just stillness and seaweed. So much seaweed. You've arrived in the only sea with no shorelines, a massive, swirling gyre in the North Atlantic, where centuries of sailing vessels entered, and not all of them came back. You run your fingers along the edge of the rail. It's wet and covered in a strange, fibrous green. The ship you're aboard now isn't moving. You're not anchored, but you're not drifting at either. You're stuck. Around you, thick mats of sargassum algae stretch for miles, tangling like a net of thoughts too dense to escape. The legends start to make sense. For centuries, this region terrified sailors. Picture yourself in the 1600s, aboard a creaking wooden ship. The wind dies. The sails go limp. You look out, and there's no land. No other ships. Just endless mats of floating vegetation, coiling like arms around your hull. For days, maybe weeks, you don't move. The horses? Oh, right. That story. See, back in the days of Spanish conquest, galleons crossing from Europe to the Americas often carried horses below deck. In the Sargasso, when winds failed and supplies ran low, they sometimes had to lighten the load. Horses were pushed overboard. To this day, sailors refer to parts of the Sargasso as the horse latitudes. Yeah, bit bleak. Even now, historians debate whether the Sargasso Sea really swallowed ships, or whether poor planning and zero breeze simply did them in. But here's the quirky bit. There are dozens of shipwrecks found here that show no sign of combat or weather damage. They're just whole, deserted, and left behind. You peer over the side. Beneath the algae, something glints. A copper plate, half buried. Letters are etched in elegant cursive. The Resolute. 1828. You remember that name. A British whaling ship, last seen heading west. Never reached its destination. One journal entry recovered from its sister ship read, "All is quiet. Too quiet. The sea here is strange." You feel the ship beneath you shudder. Not from wind or wave, but like something underneath is brushing it. Like the weeds are shifting again. There's a theory, fringe but persistent, that some early ghost ship reports in this region are due not to the ships themselves, but the ocean behaving strangely. The Sargasso gyre doesn't just trap seaweed. It collects debris, broken masts, barrels, even entire boats. The current is so slow, it preserves them in a kind of maritime graveyard on loop. You glance around. Sure enough, through the algae mat, there are hulls. More than one. Some intact, some skeletal. All still, like bones in a tide pool. And then, you see her. A schooner, no sails, listing to one side but still afloat. Painted white, her name barely visible. La Rosa de Mar. No registration, no known history. And yet, you feel like you've read that name before. You shout just once, over the still water. Your voice dies quickly. Then, faintly, a sound answers. Not a voice, but a creak. Wood straining. A deck settling. Or footsteps. You take the dinghy. The oars slice easily through the algae. It peels apart reluctantly, like it's gotten used to not being disturbed. On board the La Rosa, everything is untouched. Plates still set on the table. A logbook lying open. You run your hand across it. The ink's barely smudged, despite decades of salt and damp. The last entry reads, "Wind still absent. I think we are being watched." You shut the book quietly. There are stories of entire ships found in the Sargasso Sea, adrift for months or even years. Crews long gone, no signs of struggle. Like the Seabird, discovered off Rhode Island in 1750. Its sails were set, its logbook up to date. Breakfast still warm on the table, but not a soul aboard. Historians still argue whether the Seabird story is true, or a sailor's tall tale passed down with more rum than accuracy. But the idea keeps surfacing, that the ocean doesn't need to sink you to end you. Sometimes it just holds on. You explore below deck. Dust floats in still air. A lantern swings faintly. Something about the silence feels too full. like a breath held too long. Then a sound, not inside the ship, below it, a slow, deep bubbling, like the sea itself is exhaling. You move fast, back into the dinghy. You don't row. You paddle with your hands, like a panicked kid. Something's changing in the water. The algae is shifting, swirling now in a slow spiral. The eye of the gyre turning. Behind you, the La Rosa de Mar tips forward and dips below the mat. Just a little, like it's bowing. Then, she sinks. No splash, no drama. Just a quiet descent into the green. Gone. You reach your own ship again, breathless, wet, shaking. You don't speak. Instead, you sit, watching as the seaweed closes over the spot where she vanished. A quirky observation? Scientists have noted that Sargassum is an ecosystem unto itself. Crabs, eels, even small seahorses thrive here. It's teeming with life, which makes the total lack of birds, noise, or predators in certain areas weird, as in too quiet. Some researchers believe the seaweed dampens sound. Others think it messes with orientation. No landmarks, no wind, no real current. Just a kind of eerie stasis that's a little too dreamlike. You lie back on deck, watching the sky. The clouds are slowly crawling overhead, like they're also stuck. The ghost ships of the Sargasso aren't the loud, screaming kind. They're quieter, more patient. They don't chase you. They wait. You roll onto your side, half dozing. In the near distance, a bell rings. Not a fog bell, not a warning. Just a gentle dinner bell chime, calling someone who isn't you. Or maybe calling you. Now, the bell rings again. You sit up. It's coming from dead ahead. Faint but crisp, like a handbell being rung once every few seconds. The air is heavier now, the sea gone glassy and hard as a mirror. You swear the sound doesn't echo. It just arrives in your ears with no origin and no apology. You don't steer. The ship seems to know where to go, or maybe it doesn't matter. Either way, you're heading toward the sound. And then, there it is. A freighter, massive, looming, colorless under the moonless sky. It lists slightly to port, motionless in the water. Its hull is streaked with soot and salt. Its name barely readable. S.A. Orang Medan. A ghost ship legend so chilling, it sounds made up. And maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But tonight, you're not debating. You're boarding. The ladder's still down. Welcoming, even. You climb. The deck is empty, but not abandoned. A wrench lies beside an open hatch, a boot near the railing, standing upright, as if its owner just stepped out. You notice something eerie. Every object, every rope and coil and rail is perfectly in place. Like the crew vanished mid-motion. You duck into the passageway and the temperature drops. Your breath fogs. The metal walls sweat frost. It's too cold. Far too cold. You're in the middle of the South Pacific. This ship, if real, was reported drifting somewhere near the Straits of Malacca in the 1940s. A Dutch freighter with no cargo and no reason to exist. The official record is fuzzy at best. But what's consistent? The survivors' stories, or rather, the lack of them. According to reports, the Orang Medan was discovered adrift, unresponsive. A nearby American ship, the Silver Star, boarded her and found the entire crew dead. Not just dead, frozen in place, arms outstretched, faces contorted in terror. One sailor was found at the telegraph, his hand still gripping the key. Eyes wide open, mouths frozen mid-scream. No injuries, no fire, no signs of violence. Just horror. And then, before investigators could tow her, the Orang Medan exploded and sank. Gone. Historians still argue whether the Orang Medan ever existed. Some think it's Cold War propaganda. Others claim it's a maritime fable that grew legs. But then there are those who quietly suggest the ship was carrying something. A secret. Maybe chemicals. Maybe weapons. Or maybe something older. You move below deck. The engine room is a maze of valves and pipes, all dusted with frost. Your breath turns to tiny clouds that freeze, fall, and melt again on the grating. Then you hear it. Tap, tap, tap. Not footsteps. Morse. You follow it down to the boiler room. It's colder here. The ice crawls the walls in spiderweb patterns. You find the telegraph key. And sure enough, it's moving. Not fast, but deliberately. You crouch to listen. SOS. I die. All crew dead. Then, I freeze. That's the actual message, or at least part of what was allegedly intercepted in 1947. You reach out to touch the key. It's hot. You recoil. How is it hot? The cold in this ship doesn't make sense. The ocean outside is temperate. There's no refrigeration here, no powered systems. And yet, your fingers are stiff with chill. You check the storage hold. Bags of salt, now crumbled into fine powder. Medical crates, opened, empty syringes, and boxes labeled in languages you don't recognize. Cyrillic, maybe, or something older. One is open. Inside, a rusted canister. Cracked slightly, leaking vapor. You step back quickly. There's a popular theory, fringy but persistent, that the Orang Medan was part of a secret transport operation gone wrong, carrying deadly chemicals like phosgene gas or potassium cyanide. Something spilled. The crew suffocated or convulsed. Their contorted faces? Evidence of exposure. Seems reasonable. Except, gas doesn't freeze a ship, doesn't leave one man alive long enough to send SOS before dying at his post, doesn't make metal scream, because that's what you hear next. A deep groaning from the bulkhead, like the ship itself is breathing. You run. Upstairs, slick with frost, past open doors where faces still seem to linger in mirrors, onto the deck where the cold begins to vanish, but not the dread. You reach the railing and look back at the wheelhouse. There's a figure there, only for a moment. Tall, thin, wearing what looks like an officer's coat. You can't see the face, just a glint, maybe an eye, maybe a reflection, maybe neither. Then it vanishes. You don't remember getting back to your own vessel. But you're there. The Orang Medan drifts farther away without turning. You never saw it move. It just isn't where it was anymore. You exhale. A quirky side note. In 1952, a CIA memo, now declassified, casually references the Orang Medan case. It notes the possibility of unexplained atmospheric behavior aboard. What does that even mean? Temperature fluctuations? Radiation? Something else? The memo never elaborates. It just ends with, further investigation unnecessary. Of course it is. Back on your own deck, the air returns to its usual salt-warm texture. The frost on your hands has melted. You check the radio out of habit. It's dead. You lie down, eyes to the stars. And something about tonight feels different now. Not evil. not cursed. Just ancient. Like you've brushed against a part of history that never got written down, only passed along in sailors' whispers and shared shivers. You'll never know what the Oorang maiden carried, or if she even existed. But you do know this. You weren't alone on that ship, and you weren't supposed to see her. The stars above you blur slightly as your ship slides forward once again. There's no motor running, no sail catching the wind, but forward you drift, like the ocean has chosen your course now. You've stopped pretending you're in control. You check your compass. It spins lazily, like a kid on a merry-go-round. North, south, east, west. No direction sticks. The needle doesn't even jitter. It just rolls, smooth and slow, ignoring the laws of magnetism. You know where you are, whether you wanted to be or not. Welcome to the Bermuda Triangle, a name so overused it sounds like a tourist trap. T-shirts and trinkets. Come lose your luggage and your sense of reality. But you're not wearing a shirt that says, "I survived the triangle." You're in it. And so far, it's very quiet. That's the thing. The triangle doesn't roar. It doesn't warn. It just shifts. You feel it before you see it, like a sideways pull behind your eyes. Like time's rubber band is stretching just a little too far. This stretch of ocean, marked by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, is infamous. Planes vanish, boats disappear, radios go dead. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes they don't. And sometimes they come back without anyone on board. You peer over the edge. The water is blue, but deeper than blue. Almost black. There's no horizon anymore, just a soft gradient of fading logic. Take Flight 19, for instance. It's the one that always comes up. December 5th, 1945. 5 U.S. Navy bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale on a routine training mission. Weather? Fine. Radios? Clear. Pilots? Experienced. And then, chaos. They got lost. Desperately confused. One pilot was heard saying, "We can't find West. Everything looks strange, even the ocean." Radio contact was lost. The rescue plane sent to find them vanished too. 6 planes, 27 men. Gone. Historians still argue whether Flight 19 simply ran out of fuel, got disoriented, or entered some bizarre meteorological event. But here's where things get fuzzy. Wreckage has never been conclusively linked to those aircraft. And there's something about the tone of the last transmissions that chills your bones. Not panic. Wonder. You leave the compass alone. It's not helping. Instead, you step to the helm. No lights on the horizon. No moon. No engine hum. You feel like you're moving, but there's no reference. You could be spinning in circles or sailing backward through time. And then, your radio crackles. White water. All around. Can't see the land. You freeze. It's a recording from Flight 19. Not a recreation. The real thing. No station is broadcasting it. You're hearing a ghost. There's a theory, a quirky one, that the Bermuda Triangle isn't a place at all, but a phenomenon. A slip zone where time folds in on itself like badly washed sheets. Ships and planes don't sink. They drift, maybe for minutes, maybe for decades. Some emerge. Some reappear centuries later. Some never do. Take the Ellen Austin, for example, a 19th century ship that found a schooner drifting near the triangle. No one aboard. Perfect condition. The captain of the Austin put a crew on the derelict to sail it back. Then it disappeared. When they found it again, yes, again, The new crew was gone too. The Austin tried again with a second crew, and you can probably guess how that went. Historians debate whether the Ellen Austin incident is true or twisted. Some say it was embellished over time. Others say, well, things like that just weren't unheard of in these waters. The triangle doesn't do big, obvious destruction. It prefers subtle mischief. Radios that repeat words no one said. Clocks that run backward. Birds that fly in tight circles, refusing to leave. And your favorite, missing time. You check your watch, 1:14 a.m. You blink. It's 3:52. You didn't move. You didn't sleep. You didn't even breathe as far as you know. And yet, nearly 3 hours have slipped away, silent as fog. You try not to freak out. You almost manage. A few minutes later, the stars return, and behind them, a soft glow on the horizon, almost like sunrise, but sideways, pale green and shimmering. You know it's not land. It's too fluid. Some believe the Bermuda Triangle sits on top of something ancient, not a sea monster or a lost city, but an anomaly, something in the magnetic field, or perhaps under the seafloor, emitting interference. The Earth isn't uniform after all. It's a tangled mass of molten metal and fractured crust, and some areas might just bend physics a little, like here. The green glow pulses once, twice, then is gone. Your ship creaks as if releasing a breath. You realize you've crossed something. Not a line exactly, but a threshold. And now, things begin to feel normal again. The compass behaves. The water turns that predictable navy blue. Your fingers stop trembling. But you look back, and you swear the sky looks different behind you, as if what you just passed through was a membrane, and now you're out. Or in. Either way, you're somewhere new. You sit down on the deck, tuck your knees up, and try to slow your breathing. The ocean is calm. The air is warm. Everything feels just slightly realer, like you've snapped back into a dream you were dreaming a second ago. Was any of that real? You pick up your compass again. It reads steady, north. But when you look north, you see a ship, familiar, waiting, still ghostly, still wrong, still exactly where you need to go next. The ship ahead doesn't shimmer or vanish. It doesn't creak or call to you. It just waits, stoic, gray, and sprawling like a block of forgotten time anchored on the water. It's not a ghost ship in the traditional sense. No wild legends or famous disappearances. No frostbitten corpses or screaming telegraphs. But it feels haunted, just the same. You recognize it. Or rather, you recognize where it's from. You've arrived at Suisun Bay, California. Except, you didn't travel west. You didn't dock. You didn't do anything. But here you are, and spread before you like a graveyard with no headstones, the Ghost Fleet. Officially called the National Defense Reserve Fleet, this is one of the largest floating boneyards of ships in the world. Cargo vessels, troop transports, oilers, and gray ghosts of old warships, all lined up, bow to stern, like they're still waiting for the call to arms. Except the phone hasn't rung in decades. Some of these ships have been here since World War II. Others came later, after Korea or Vietnam, when the Navy didn't quite want to scrap them, but didn't want to use them either. So they anchored them here, let the salt take its time, and let the paint peel until the ships themselves started whispering. You pull alongside one of the older hulls. Its name is obscured, rusted off, and covered with bird droppings and kelp strands. but you can feel its history radiating out like heat from a dying coal. You board. The deck doesn't groan. That's part of what makes it worse. It should, but it doesn't. Your footsteps echo through the empty corridors. Rows of lockers still hang open with forgotten boots inside. A paper cup rests on a metal desk, disintegrating into dust. In the mess hall, the menu board reads, Friday, tuna salad. It hasn't been Friday for a long time. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The Suisun Bay Ghost Fleet once held over 300 ships, a floating armada of mothballed steel. Many were built for combat but never saw it. Others carried ammunition, fuel, prisoners, even atomic materials. Some were turned into artificial reefs. Some were secretly scrapped. A few simply sank where they were. Historians still argue whether keeping these ships afloat for so long was a stroke of military genius or a bureaucratic oversight that spiraled out of control. But to you, it feels like a secret archive, a floating memory bank too dangerous to destroy, but too disturbing to leave visible. You wander deeper into the vessel. You can't help but notice how each compartment seems staged, as if the crew just stepped out for a meeting. Jackets still hang on hooks. A game of poker sits mid-hand in the officer's lounge. You look closer. One of the cards is a joker, but it's facing upside down, unlike the rest. Quirky detail or leftover superstition? Then you see the hallway. One light still flickers. Just one. You walk toward it. It's coming from the radio room. Inside, you find the equipment intact, powerless, but warm to the touch. There's a reel-to-reel recorder on the table. You don't remember pressing play. Maybe you didn't, but it starts to roll. The voice that comes through is grainy, male, southern accent, young. We didn't sign up for this. Nobody told us they were putting it on board. Locked the hold, told us not to go near it. But it hums at night. Lights flicker. Men sleepwalk. I saw Baker open the hatch by himself, eyes wide open, but he wasn't there, you know. Click. The tape ends. You stare at it. There's no label, no logbook, no explanation. Some speculate the Ghost Fleet was more than just storage, that a few of these ships were used for testing, psychological experiments, radio frequency disruption, even low-grade nuclear exposure. One fringe claim says a vessel in Suisun Bay was once part of the Philadelphia experiment, that famous alleged Navy attempt to render a ship invisible in 1943. The theory? It didn't disappear into thin air. It was relocated here, quietly, among the rest, like a needle in a stack of needles. You step back onto the deck, and you see them. Not people, not ghosts, just outlines, barely there silhouettes moving between ships. Silent, repeating the same loops. A man hoisting nothing with invisible rigging. A woman checking a clipboard, flipping pages that don't exist. A child running between bulkheads barefoot. They don't see you. Or maybe they do and don't care. These aren't spirits. They're memories. Echoes of tasks left unfinished. Routines so deeply embedded in the steel that even rust can't scrub them away. You feel the pull again. Time to leave. The Ghost Fleet doesn't trap you. It doesn't threaten. It simply holds. Like a library full of books no one wants to read, but no one dares burn. As your boat glides away, you glance back. One ship, larger than the others, turns slightly, like it's watching. You wonder what it remembers, and whether you're part of its memory now. Your fingers are still curled from gripping the rails of that ghost fleet, but the water calls again. You turn back to the ocean, not Suisun's sleepy bay this time, but deeper, wilder currents, where the salt stings more and the stars look just a bit wrong. And there, drifting with arrogant indifference, is your next encounter. A shipwreck that didn't get the memo that shipwrecks are supposed to sink. It lists to one side, hull scarred and flaking, but it's still afloat. Barely. It shouldn't be. You squint at the shape and realize it's upside down, just a rusty belly to the sky. No masts, no flags, no crew. You didn't think ghost ships could invert, did you? But this one is called the MV Joyita, and it's got quite the nautical resume and weirdness. In 1955, this small merchant vessel was found drifting off the coast of Fiji, half submerged, no crew, no lifeboats, a cargo of empty medical crates, bloodied bandages, a radio tuned to the emergency channel, and, most chillingly, its logbooks, chronometers, and navigational tools were all gone. So what happened? You climb aboard your own vessel's bow and watch as you slowly pass the Joyita's twin in this dreamy reenactment. The original had been designed to be unsinkable. Yes, like the Titanic, and we all know how that worked out. But it had cork-lined hulls and sealed compartments. It floated, even when battered. That's your mainstream historical fact. The MV Joyita was never truly lost. It was found, weeks later, a drifting riddle with a waterline 4 feet higher than it should have been. The sea had claimed most of its functionality, but the hull still refused to drown, like a stubborn ghost doing laps for no one. You spot something on the edge of the water. A fin? No, it's part of another wreck. Maybe multiple. It's hard to tell where one ends and the next begins. Wrecks that should have sunk are drifting lazily, as though physics just decided to take a nap out here. There's the Bellamica, an Italian ghost yacht found in 2006 near Sardinia. No registration, no people, no distress. On board, police found maps of North African seas, a half-eaten meal, and a pile of clothes that suggested someone had just changed. The boat was seaworthy, just abandoned. And here's a quirky tidbit. Authorities said there was a flag on board, Luxembourg's, which is odd, considering Luxembourg doesn't have a coastline. Makes you wonder, right? You pass another, SS Valencia, or what's left of her. She's not afloat anymore, but she used to be. The steamship wrecked off Vancouver Island in 1906. Most of her passengers perished, but here's where things get eerie. Lifeboats from the wreck were found still drifting years later, some as late as 1933, 27 years after the disaster. Still intact, still empty. Historians still argue whether these lifeboats were truly from the Valencia, or whether survivors could have made it further than believed. But the sea doesn't offer footnotes, just fragments. You lean back, letting your hand trail the water. It's warm, oddly warm. Not like bath water, more like a fever. You pass another derelict. This one has ropes dangling like wet hair, sails shredded, but it's upright. Somehow, balancing against all odds. You get the feeling that these ships, the Joyitas, the Bellamicas, the forgotten cutters, and nameless barges, aren't staying afloat because of buoyancy. It's something else. A reluctance, a resistance to vanishing, as if being remembered is more important than resting. One small fishing trawler catches your attention. It's covered in barnacles, the net still draped like seaweed over the side. You see no registration, no markings, just a single boot left on the deck. Men's size 9. You picture someone hopping away in one sock, and that mental image is both funny and horrifying. A light joke, yes, but seriously, where did the guy go? You glide past and see something even weirder. One wrecked ship is actively circling. You watch it complete a lazy, wide arc around a point of nothing, just water, and then do it again. And again. It's like a vinyl record stuck in a groove. You look at your instruments. The water's not spinning. There's no current, no whirlpool. Just that ship, looping as if tethered to an invisible leash. You want to go closer, but your boat tilts sharply as if to say, "Let's not." Instead, you take a mental note. Some ghost ships don't just drift. They repeat. Movements, routes, loops, maybe memories too. One fringe theory, get ready, claims that certain ships are haunted not by people, but by events. Not souls, but replays, like cosmic DVDs on loop. A ship turns to port at exactly 2:37 a.m. every night, because that's when its final maneuver happened. Or because it never stopped happening. You hear a faint chime, your clock. You check the time. It's wrong. Or maybe just repeating. You flip the dial to your shortwave radio again and hear a single word, returning. That's all, just returning. You don't know who said it. Male, female, human. But it hits you. Some of these ships aren't ghost ships because they're abandoned. They're ghost ships because they're coming back. Over and over. Half sunk, upside down, inside out, or chasing their own tails. They're returning, and they don't know why. You sail on. They bob in your wake, some upside down, some half gone. Some circling still, none of them ready to let go. The surface of the water begins to smooth out now. Less chop, more mirror. You drift into the quieter part of the ocean. It feels deeper here, like the sea's holding its breath. The moonlight glints just right, revealing odd shadows beneath you. Long shapes, angular ones, ships, dozens, maybe hundreds. They aren't floating. They aren't wrecked. They're preserved. And you're not just sailing anymore. You're gliding over a gallery. This is where the ocean keeps its secrets most carefully. On the seafloor, where ghost ships lie so pristine they might wake up and start sailing again. Take the Black Sea, for instance. Archaeologists discovered over 60 ancient shipwrecks there in the last decade, preserved so perfectly that even the masts and rudders are still intact. One Greek trading vessel from around 400 BC looks like it was parked for a lunch break, not buried in silt for over 2,000 years. How? Lack of oxygen. The Black Sea is anoxic at certain depths, meaning almost no oxygen exists to fuel the bacteria that usually devour wood and cloth. So the ships just stayed. And here comes your mainstream historical fact. The Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project mapped out these wrecks using deep-sea scanning and remotely operated vehicles. It's one of the largest underwater surveys ever, and what they found was basically a ghost navy. Merchant ships, warships, galley-style vessels, each more haunting than the last. You press your face to the glass of your vessel, peering down like it's an aquarium. And there it is, a Roman galley, its twin steering oars still in place. No coral, no damage, just shadow and shape, suspended in time. Then another, a Byzantine ship, its hull carved with patterns, its deck still scattered with amphorae, ancient clay jars, some likely still holding oil or wine. You try not to imagine the crew's final dinner. You fail. But these aren't wrecks in the conventional sense. They're waiting rooms. And here's a quirky tidbit. One Ottoman ship had its captain's chamber fully intact, with wooden floorboards, writing instruments, and a spoon still resting beside a ceramic bowl. A spoon, 200 years underwater, and it just stayed. Like someone put it down during a storm and thought, "I'll be back." Historians still argue whether these submerged fleets were the victims of bad navigation, sudden squalls, or ancient naval battles long forgotten, or maybe the sailors never knew what hit them. It's one thing to sink in the chaos of war. It's another to drift silently downward, not even realizing your ship has become a legend before your lungs empty. You feel a tug. Emotional? Metaphysical? Hard to say. Because these ghost ships below, they don't seem dead. They seem paused. And then you dream it. No, see it. One of the ships rising slowly. Not breaking apart, not struggling, just lifting. Barnacles peeling off like confetti, water streaming off the hull like fresh rain. Its sails unfurl, not torn but taut, as if remembering their job. The rudder creaks. The anchor lifts itself. The ship breathes. You blink, and it's gone. Just a hallucination. Maybe. You know what's stranger? These ships have no human ghosts on board. Not a whisper. No cries for help. No shadows pacing the decks. The ghosts here are different. Conceptual. It's not the crew that lingers. It's the purpose. The idea of the voyage. One fringe theory from a marine folklorist, yes, that's a real job, suggests that ships remember movement, that the energy of travel embeds itself in a vessel like muscle memory, and that certain wrecks maintain their form because the sea respects the journey, even in death. It sounds poetic, but staring at a 13th century trade ship resting perfectly on the seabed, untouched by time or biology, it doesn't feel so ridiculous. You see one wreck that makes your heart skip. It's wooden, long, looks Scandinavian, a Viking ship, deep enough to be 1,000 years old. There's no gold, no runes, but there's a carved figurehead at the bow, a dragon, barely eroded. Its mouth is open, and you're suddenly sure it was singing as it went down. You imagine the last minutes. The warriors below deck strapping down barrels. Someone fumbling with a seal-skin satchel of dried fish. The steersman humming a funeral song without knowing it. The way the ship creaked differently. Just once, before everything went black. And somehow, that exact moment is still here. The Black Sea isn't the only place. There's the Gulf of Mexico, where 18th century pirate wrecks still lurk in eerie silence, cannonballs resting beside hollowed-out hulls. There's Lake Michigan, where over 100 19th century schooners rest in water so cold and clear that fish still weave between their skeletal beams like they're playing tag. You press your hand to the glass again and feel it tremble. One of the ships below has turned slightly. It wasn't facing that way before. You squint. It's a steamer, probably late 1800s. 2 decks, not much left of the windows, but the frame is intact. And in the bridge window, something flickers. A light? A reflection? Or the glint of an officer's badge, still pinned to a coat that isn't there? You look down long enough to see another impossible detail, written in rust across a hull. To return. Is it real? A trick of the water? An accident of corrosion? Or an intent, etched with purpose? The water ripples. Something shifts. You pull back. Beneath the surface, the ghost ships are waiting. Not for you, but for themselves. For someone to remember their last voyage and finish the story. For the right tide. The right name spoken aloud. The right reason to rise. You leave the stillness of the deep behind, but its pressure lingers in your lungs, like a whisper you can't quite exhale. The sea grows darker, the stars crowd closer, and the horizon seems to collapse into a soft fold of fog ahead. And waiting in that fog, silent, still, not quite real, is one final ghost ship. Not the most famous, not the most studied, but maybe the most persistent. It's a barge, plain, rust-streaked, built more for hauling gravel than glory. But you feel its presence long before you see its shape, like a low hum behind your ribs. You lean over the rail and whisper to yourself, "Not again," even though you've never been here before. The ship is called the SS Baichimo. Wait, you think you've already met the Baichimo, right? Back in the ice fields? You did. But this is something else. This isn't the frozen hulk that roamed the Arctic for decades. This is a new form, or maybe the final one, because you're not in Alaska now. You're somewhere near the Black Sea again, though your compass doesn't agree. The fog eats up the sky, and for a moment you feel like you're not on Earth anymore, or not entirely. The ship emerges. No, condenses out of the haze. Low, long, familiar in its anonymity. You stare and realize it's not labeled. No name on the bow, no numbers on the hull. Just that same quiet shape you've seen before. In dreams, maybe, or on the edges of old maps. And then you recognize something unsettling. This isn't a ghost ship. It's all of them. Bits of the Mary Celeste in the railings, a hatch that looks like it belongs to the Orang Medan. The mast structure echoes the Baichimo. The stern mimics the Valencia. Even the overturned curvature of the Joyita is somehow in there, like a collage, a composite. You're not hallucinating. You're seeing a story that's been rewritten too many times. The sea has assembled its memories into one ship, one ever-drifting watcher. You approach, and your instruments die. All of them. Not with a bang, just a slow, crawling stillness. The GPS freezes, the engine sputters and gives up. The compass spins lazily and stops pointing anywhere in particular. The SS Wo Knows What Now drifts closer. Its deck is empty, but the hatches are open. The bridge door swings on a hinge you can't hear. The fog surrounds everything, but the ship is dry. Dry like paper, like something stored, not weathered. You step aboard. Your foot makes no sound. Below deck, it's dim, but not dark. The walls are clean. No rot, no mold, no blood. Just anticipation. The kind you feel before a bell rings, or before a verdict is read. And then you hear it. A bell. One chime. No wind. No wave. Just one. Solitary ring. You turn and see a logbook lying on a narrow desk. It's open, but every page is blank, until the last one. There's a name scrawled in ink. Your name. And under it, today's date. You back away slowly. Is this the end of the journey, or the start of one that's been looping forever? A ship cursed not with ghosts, but with the memory of every vanishing ever whispered over water. Historians still argue whether phantom ships are cultural projections, misidentifications, or proof of parallel time loops anchored in maritime trauma. And yes, maritime trauma is the most emo phrase the ocean has ever gifted us. But out here, standing on this impossible hybrid of all haunted vessels, one thing feels certain. Some ships aren't just lost. They're remembered into persistence. You return to your vessel. The fog lifts just enough to show stars again. The ocean stretches smooth and black to infinity. But the ghost ship stays behind, watching, waiting, maybe following, though you'll never hear it. You take the wheel. It works again. Of course it does. Your journey ends with a calm so absolute it feels unreal, or like it's resetting. Your logbook? Still blank. But that bell rings again. The sea begins to soften now, its midnight edges curling inward like a sigh. The ghost ships fade back into the deep, settling into their graves or their loops, whatever keeps them company out there in the endless dark. Your boat is quiet. The wheel is still. The stars above shimmer without urgency, and the air takes on that cool, brushed texture that comes right before sleep, the kind that slips into your lungs slowly, like a lullaby made of salt and old wood. You're safe now. You made it through the storm, the silence, the screaming hulls and flickering distress signals. The ships that never should have sailed, the ones that never wanted to stop. They've told you their stories. Some in rust, some in ice, some in riddles wrapped in barnacles. And now they rest. So should you. Let your muscles loosen. Let your eyelids grow heavy. There's nothing more to see tonight, only the soft reflection of moonlight on waves and the faint memory of a bell echoing once, far off in the distance. You're not lost. You're not forgotten. You're exactly where you should be, drifting into dreams. Good night, sailor.